Caribbean leaders divided on whether opposition parties should be invited to CARICOM summits. That's our top story in Caribbean Newsline for Tuesday, July 17. From the CMC News Center in Bridgetown, I'm Nicole Best. Good evening. Regional leaders have expressed dissenting views on whether national opposition parties should have a seat at the CARICOM summit table. The matter was raised at the last summit's closing press conference chaired by Jamaica Prime Minister Andrew Holness earlier this month. Holness said though he is not willing to take a position on the matter at this time, he can appreciate the significance of a working relationship between CARICOM heads and opposition.
Because this is national to regional, it's important to have bipartisan view on policy, or at least to observe the policy process, and that is admirable, which is why that when we did the Commission report, we took it to Parliament and had a resolution debated in Parliament to come to a common position for Jamaica. So we acknowledge that yes, it is important that many of the decisions that we're making should either have observation or participation.
But St. Kitts and Nevis Prime Minister Dr. Timothy Harris says there is a need to have the opposition sit at the CARICOM summit to reduce implementation deficit in the integration process. He says the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, the OECS, has a joint parliament that allows for the opposition of its member states to actively participate, and he believes it is a system that could be adopted and fashioned to suit the needs of CARICOM.
That there is merit in having some opportunity. Yes, it speaks to observers, but some opportunity for inclusion, because part of the implementation deficit, of course, is due to the fact that usually when different governments, they are changing governments, the opposition at times come to the table not fully seized with where we are at in terms of the regional agenda and acting with an absence of adequate information, which at times bring a lull to the speed and the depth with which we go with the integration process.
Barbados Prime Minister Mia Mottley is of the view that the scope of groups to be covered goes beyond the opposition political parties onto civil society groups. She therefore advocates for the streaming of plenary sessions so as to give everyone an opportunity to see and hear what has been discussed and voted on.
But when there were changes in government post-2006, immediately the new governments coming in did not have a sense of CARICOM, did not have a sense of the accomplishments, did not have a sense of commitment. Bless you. And to that extent, it meant that, in my view, what we have seen in the last decade has come more from the inability to recognize that you cannot have an adversarial approach in a consensus-making body. CARICOM is meant to build consensus. If it is only speaking to the governments and not the opposition or civil society, there will always be that division in our member countries, and when there are changes of government, we are at risk of going back instead of going forward.
The International Monetary Fund, the IMF, says economic growth in Guyana slowed in 2017 but became more broad-based, and is expected to accelerate in the run-up to the start of oil production in 2020. The fund recently concluded its Article 4 consultation with Guyanese officials. On Monday, the Washington-based financial institution said that at the end of 2017, Guyana's economic growth stood at 2.1%, down from 3.4% in 2016. They say this was the result of lower than expected mining output and a weak performance in the sugar sector. Inflation remained unchanged at 1.5%. The IMF said the extractive industries and public investment will be the key drivers of the country's economic growth over the medium term. It is recommending that the country seek ways to reduce the costs of doing business, strengthen private sector confidence, and advance productivity enhancing reforms. It says all that is essential for sustaining growth in the short term and reaping the full benefits of the oil windfall once it materializes. And still in Guyana, the government says it's moving to address the influx of Venezuelans who have been arriving in the country via the hinterland borders. Representatives from the Ministries of Public Health, Social Protection, Communities, Citizenship, the Guyana Police Force and Civil Defense Commission, who constitute a newly formed board, met for the first time on Monday on the issue. The group is expected to prepare a coordinated effort to give structure to the government's response to the situation. According to Minister of Citizenship Winston Felix, the administration will be reinforcing the Immigration Department in Region 1 to deal with the irregular arrival of Venezuelans into the country. But the government said it is working to facilitate the refugees. Recently, much needed supplies, including medicine, food and camping equipment, were sent to villages near the border shared with Venezuela. Meanwhile, a delegation from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the Ministry of Citizenship has returned from the border town of Puerto Ordaz in Venezuela. The team conducted an assessment to ascertain the effectiveness of the government's response to the current situation. Just last week, the regional chairman in Region 1 complained about the large number of Venezuelans coming over into his region and putting a strain on resources there. The Bahamas Defense Force has promised the public and the local fishing community it is committed to maintaining a strong presence to safeguard them against recent threats of harm. These threats were made by way of social media early last week after a foreign poaching vessel was arrested for illegally fishing in the southern Bahamas. The recent threats have gained the attention of the government and local fishermen. The voice message, according to local reports, translate the message from Spanish to English, threatening harm to Bahamian fishermen, even going as far as to mention the terrorist group Al-Qaeda. The island's foreign affairs minister says whether credible or not, he wants all parties to be on the alert. And he says the Bahamian government has used an ally in Cuba to help ward off illegal boaters. We get more in this ZNS Network News report.
We will burn you. We will kill you. Those lobster belong to us as much as anybody else. The ocean's a free space and all of that.
It may be an unconfirmed threat, but it's raised ire over persistent Dominican plunder of Bahamian marine resources. And that was enough, says Foreign Affairs Minister Darren Henfield, for him to put everyone on alert.
We are yet to verify whether or not the threat is credible, but we decided as a ministry that we would err on the side of caution and send a release to the Bahamian people and to fishermen in particular, that they should exercise extreme caution when operating at sea. If they encounter foreign fishermen, that they should not approach them.
This image of a Defense Force boat rammed by aggressive Dominican poachers back in November 2016 is proof of the level of offensive Dominican poachers have launched, and this huge catch harvested just last week, a testament to their boldness. In light of the alleged threat, Minister Henfield says his mind is drawn back to a portion of an agreement with Cuba to partner in arresting offenders.
There's an agreement that we would protect each other's resources, us and Cuba. We have been trying to work with the Cuban government, because what happens is the Dominican vessel would come, drop off smaller boats to fish in our waters, and then drift out into international waters. And when the Defense Force pursue, they would run into Cuban waters. And we all recognize the ghost of Flamingo, that incident back in 1980. And so I thought it prudent that we sit and talk with the Cubans and ask them to reshare this border. We have this agreement to assist us in policing our borders.
The Cuba-Bahamas alliance led to the arrest of Dominican poachers earlier this year. Minister Henfield says talks on the sidelines of CARICOM last week sought to solidify the partnership.
The Prime Minister, whilst in Jamaica, met with the Cuban president and thanked him for it. I personally called the ambassador and thanked her. I spoke with my opposite, the Minister of Foreign Affairs from Cuba, and I thanked him because this is very important. We've established a good rapport and relations. The Defense Force and the Cuban Border Guard are working closely together, and we hope to build on that relationship. There's lots more work to be done, but we think we're making some inroads.
The Mexican charter company that owns the plane that crashed in Cuba earlier this year has attributed the tragedy to human error. According to the company, data recorders showed the Boeing 737 had taken off too steeply, creating a lack of lift, which caused the aircraft to plunge, killing all 112 people on board. The company said it based its assessment on data from the plane's data recorders, which had been extracted by a team made up of investigators from Cuba, Mexico, and the United States of America, and representatives from Boeing and engine manufacturers Pratt and Whitney. However, the Mexican pilots union, the ASPA, said Damot's statement that was released, that should be the statement that was released before the official investigation had concluded, was irresponsible. The crash on May 18 was one of the worst to happen in the Caribbean for decades. Eyewitnesses described seeing the jet burst into flames before crashing into a field close to a wooded area near Havana's main airport. And still to come in Caribbean Newsline, calls for dialogue to end the controversy surrounding the construction of an airport in Barbuda. Stay with us, there's more news after the break.
Passion for what she believes is unmatched.
I wanted to get to the point where you can shake me off that perfect piece.
She's a book-off radio host, philanthropist, and motivational speaker.
And I said, I'm going to write you a check for $10,000, which I'm not.
Spirit, soul, and body.
To get them some help through the transition.
I'm Karita D, and you're listening to Girlfriend Get a Life.
Former Antigua and Barbuda Prime Minister Celeste Bird has called on Barbuda's parliamentary representative Trevor Walker to meet with Prime Minister Gaston Brown to reach a compromise amid a controversy over the construction of a new airport on the sister isle. His call comes less than 2 weeks after an injunction was filed in the High Court to halt the construction. The challenge by Barbudans John Mussington and Jacqueline Frank was filed on the grounds that proper procedures were not followed and critical requirements were not met by the central government before construction began. They contend that multiple governmental departments failed to conduct an environmental impact assessment to get the approval of the Barbuda Council for the proposed plans, and that the plans submitted for the construction were inadequate. But Attorney General Stedroy Benjamin said that the duo's application is without merit and has no legal basis. And Prime Minister Brown says the complainants are seeking to create strife, and it is unacceptable.
Now that the airport, at least the runway, is almost completed, they're now seeking to create strife. Now that cannot be acceptable. We are spending $50 million to build a new airstrip so that we can bring more people to the island, so that you can have a thriving tourism industry. We can have a situation that now that we've invested $50 million in an airport and building a runway, that you're now going to stall the project and stop the project. That will be $50 million that will be put to waste. It serves no constructive purpose.
Lawmen in Guyana are dismissing claims that deportees are continuing a life of crime on their return to the country and contributing to the overall crime rate. Head of the Criminal Investigations Department, Paul Williams, says there are no statistics by police to prove that is the case, and there is a system in place to monitor deportees. We get more in this HGP Nightly News report.
While Caribbean governments have long complained that deportees with hardly any family ties in the land of their birth often continue a life of crime, Head of the Criminal Investigations Department of the Guyana Police Force, Assistant Commissioner of Police Paul Williams, said that based on his records, there is no evidence to support deportees continuing a life of crime in Guyana.
On the basis in terms of the number of persons being deported, I want to say that there is no hard evidence or intelligence to show that these people are actually involved in any aspect of crime, or where they would have gone out to get themselves involved in any type of activities to come in conflict with the law. People are of the view or the perception is that once they're being deported and they come back here, they'll be involved in crime or so on. But I want to tell the public that there's no hardcore intelligence or information to that aspect.
Mr. Williams posited that once one is deported to Guyana, that person will be monitored by the police. He spoke of the police's system to monitor deportees.
You do not necessarily monitor their day-to-day activities?
Well, not actually, being at the door and looking at them and watching them. You understand me? But we'll know definitely they will have to report at times they will come. And then remember too, we have our intelligence within the various communities and so on. So we'll know exactly, if indeed, how close they are, who they're involved with and so on, right? Because I don't really want to divulge, too much to the level, but we know where they are, we know what they're doing.
The CID, according to Mr. Williams, has been maintaining all records related to deportee interviews and also the agreements with individuals who have consented to supervise the deported persons.
When those persons arrive, the immigration department also will be alerted. So when those persons arrive, the immigration department will process them, then they will bring them to CID headquarters. When they come to CID headquarters, we will now do our processes in terms of photograph, fingerprint, everything and so on, and upload that information in our database. And also we have a monitoring system in terms of where they will have to report. Okay, and we keep that type of information and tracking on those individuals.
Williams dispelled rumors that persons are being deported to Guyana unknowing to immigration officials and the police at large.
And ahead in Newsline Sport, Andrea Russell in, Marlon Samuels out, and that's as the Windies ODI squad for the 3-match series against Bangladesh is released. Stay with us. Sport is next.
This hurricane tip comes to you compliments the Caribbean Disaster Emergency Management Agency and the Caribbean Media Corporation. Be prepared. Check into your home and auto insurance. Confirm that the policies are valid and the coverage is appropriate.
Join leading media and communications executives as well as climate change experts in Kingston, Jamaica from August 13 to 15 for the Caribbean Broadcasting Union 49th Annual General Assembly. This year's assembly, held in partnership with the CARICOM Climate Change Center, explores the theme, Building Resilience to Climate Change, Business, Technology and Content Options for Caribbean Media. Featured presenters include the Honorable Dr. Rural Reid, Jamaica's Minister responsible for information, the region's Chief Climate Change Negotiator, Mr. Carlos Fuller, the Caribbean Telecommunications Union, the Broadcasting Commission of Jamaica, and the International Telecommunications Union Caribbean Office. And broadcast manufacturers and media services enjoy special exhibition rates at this year's conference, joining premier exhibitor Eutelsat. For more information on discounted rates for delegates staying at the Jamaica Pegasus Hotel or flying on the official airline Caribbean Airlines, go to the CBU website or call the Secretariat. The CBU looks forward to welcoming you to this key conference on climate change and the Caribbean media.
Explosive all-rounder Andre Russell is poised to play his first one-day international in 3 years after being named in a 13-man squad for the three-match series against Bangladesh starting next Sunday in Guyana. But no place has been found for veteran right-hander Marlon Samuels. The 30-year-old Russell has not played since the tour of Sri Lanka back in 2015, with his availability having been further compounded by a year-long ban for an anti-doping whereabouts violation which ruled him out of all competitive cricket last year. He and superstar opener Chris Gayle are the most experienced members of the Windies ODI setup, which otherwise comprises a number of young players. All-rounder Carlos Brathwaite, along with the left-arm spinner Nikita Miller and seamers Kesrick Williams and Sheldon Cottrell, have all been ignored, while Test seamer Kimar Roach has been rested. Speedster Alzari Joseph has returned to the side after recovering from a stress fracture which kept him out of competitive cricket for most of the year. As expected, the squad will be led by Test skipper Jason Holder and includes impressive 20-year-old pacer Kimo Paul and Test left-hander Kieran Powell, who has not played an ODI in over a year. The second ODI is also carded for Guyana on July 25th, with the final match set for Warner Park in St. Kitts 3 days later. Staying with cricket, Guyana comfortably disposed of Jamaica by 31 runs to remain out front in the regional Under-17 championship with 1 round remaining. Playing at Gilbert Park on Monday, Guyana rallied to 174 for 7 off their 50 overs after being sent in with opener Sachin Singh top scoring with 48 and Andre Sipasad getting 38, Leon Swami 25. In reply, Guyana lost O'Neill Roberts without a run on the board in the opening over, but recovered through the efforts of Daniel Beckford, who stroked an unbeaten 73. Left-arm spinner Niran Bisu picked up 3 for 15, while Leon Swami and Sipasad finished with 2 wickets apiece. At the National Cricket Centre, Barbados remained in striking distance of the leaders in second place when they crushed Leeward Islands by 130 runs. Sent in, Barbados benefited from half-centuries from Matthew Ford and Antonio Morris, while Jaden Leacock struck at unbeaten 42 to get up to 245 for 7 of their 50 overs. The Leewards were then restricted to 115 all-out in the 34th over, with new ball bowler Jaden Hoyt claiming 3 for 29. Hosts Trinidad and Tobago were also in winning form as they trounced Windward Islands by 151 runs under the Duckworth-Lewis Stern method. They piled up an imposing 259 for 7 of their 50 overs behind Isaiah Gomes' top score of 66, with Antonio Gomez hitting 49 and Tariq Muhammad 43. Set a revised target of 224 off 28 overs. The Windwards were dismissed for 72 in the 26th, with left-arm spinner Nicholas Ali wrecking the innings with 4 for 25, and speedster Jaden Seals supporting with 3 for 5. We're switching sport now. Jamaica's reggae girls will kick off their quest for glory at the CAC Games beginning this week. The girls will begin their campaign against Venezuela. TVJ's Karen Madden reports.
Made up of most of the members of the Reggae Girls team, which topped their group in the first round of Caribbean CONCACAF World Cup qualifiers, left the island brimming with confidence that they would do well in Barranquilla. On Sunday, they earned a valuable preparation against the St. George's College Under-16 team at the National Stadium. And though they were dropped 6-0 by the Georgians, at least one member of the team felt it gave the girls an opportunity to tighten up on some areas as they head into the CAC Games.
I think we played well yesterday. We have things that we take away from the game and things we can improve on and stuff like that. And I think we have a great set of girls going into this competition.
Now the Humans' coached team will look to do well in the CAC Games, where they will come face-to-face with host nation Colombia, Venezuela, and Costa Rica in Group A. Aside from these countries, which have already been to the World Cup, the technical staff of Menzies, Lorne Donaldson and Andrew Price, will be eyeing Group B, which includes Trinidad and Tobago, Mexico, Haiti, and Nicaragua.
Definitely. We feel comfortable because we're in a better group, tougher games. I would say we want to say we're looking ahead of the CSC games, but we wanted to go to the CSC games to get good quality games And we know that we come out there evaluating this group to the utmost, that what we want to come out and really know that what the players that we need to bring forward to the next round of CONCACAF.
Jamaica will play Venezuela on Thursday, Costa Rica on Saturday, and Colombia next week, Monday.
And finally, in horse racing, Chavian Chow rode a double, but fellow Jamaican Tyrone Nelson stole the honors in the feature Harry Jeffrey Stakes at Assini Boya Downs last weekend by winning with 3-1 choice Candy Giant. Riding on a 6-race card on Saturday after the scheduled 7th race was cancelled, Nelson partnered with the Chestnut Colt to Trunk's 3-year-olds by 5 lengths in a time of 1 minute 41.60 seconds. Darren Dunn has the call.
So Blue running together, and behind them Candy Giant and Pete Marwick are the early trailers. The opening quarter 24-3, and now Primo Touch will take over and draw off to a 2.5 length advantage. Scooting up the inside is Candy Giant. Zach Ridge Road in third, in between horses Why So Blue on the outside in fourth. Then it's Pete Marwick, and United We Stand will be your trailer. The half 49-4. Primo Touch now gets company from Candy Giant, who matches strides and now goes on by Primo Touch, who's back to second and looks in distress. Back in third, Why So Blue, making a move on the outside. Pete Marwick, 3/4, 1:14-1. Candy Giant hits the head of the lane and is drawn off to 5. Pete Marwick on the outside is going to try and run down Candy Giant, but is running out of ground. Candy Giant is going to take the Harry Jeffrey. Pete Marwick in second, Primo Touch in third, and fourth to Why So Blue.
And that's the sport. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Thanks to Sync TV, we're ever so grateful for you guys, the fans. Yes, you guys have stuck and stayed with us for over 7 years. We started off on internet, we transitioned into TV, and now we're seen all over the Caribbean, and we can be located across the world. Just log on to www.thanks2sync.tv to locate us. We also can be hired for other events, launch parties, you name it, we are available.
That's Caribbean Newsline. For news and sport around the clock, subscribe to CaribNews.com. For more of our programming, log on to CaribVision.tv and subscribe to CaribVision's YouTube channel. We'll be back here again tomorrow. But from all of us at CMC News, thank you for watching and do have yourselves a good night.